All right, we're live. Hello, everybody. Thank y'all for joining us tonight. I'm so excited. Make sure y'all go and share this in other groups and let them know we're live right now, also. I just want to welcome everybody to the chat. Hey, Tamara, thank you for joining us tonight. Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations, thank you for joining. Carla Hipkins, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Paranormal Trucker Podcast, thank you for joining us. And everybody else who's here with us right now that's joined or will be joining, thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much. Um, so I just want to thank everybody. So basically, right now, if y'all would let everybody else know that we're live. Tonight, I have Justin Decker. Justin is going to give us a brief bio of himself, tell you who he is and how he got into cryptids and what his standpoint on. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the Cott County, Tennessee case, and he's going to give us his perspective tonight on that particular case, his ideology on it, his reasoning, his beliefs on it, and what he's found out. We're going to go into that. So Justin, if you would you go ahead and kind of tell everybody who you are and what your standpoint is on the case and all that good stuff, how you got into cryptids or your belief in Bigfoot, Dogman, just tell everybody about that.
Sure, absolutely. All right, guys. Justin Decker. You may have seen me on a couple of different podcasts. I was born and raised in the Amazon jungle of South America in Colombia. Lived there for the first 9.5 years of my life. Moved to Upper Michigan from there. Then kind of been all over the U.S. As I grew up, and currently landed in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, in the Smoky Mountains. Just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Cott County. So that's kind of what drew my interest to these particular cases in the first place, being so close to it. I've kind of always believed in cryptids and the unusual. Growing up where I did, we just kind of had this understanding of there's so much more out there than what people, mainstream science says there is. I've seen and experienced animals in the jungle that at the time, as far as we knew, nobody knew existed. It was just part of our everyday life, though.
Mm-hmm.
One a good example of that my dad likes to tell the story of, we lived on a lake for a while with a house on stilts for safety from the indigenous people. And there was a turtle in the lake that was very common, and we used to eat it all the time as part of our food source.
Mm-hmm.
Well, come to find out, this turtle was actually a highly endangered turtle. And if you look it up, you can find it. It's called the mata mata.
Okay.
And there's been specials on it and all this stuff. And for us, it was very commonplace. It didn't seem to be endangered at all. So it was part of our food source, So we just kind of grew up with the idea of all this stuff. You know what I mean? I've seen water snakes. We had poisonous water snakes in one of our caños, our creeks down there. And at the time, at least, according to science, there were no poisonous water snakes in that area of the jungle. And so just growing up, we grew up with the understanding there was so much more out there than what was accepted. And it was just part of our everyday life. And what really kind of got me into cryptids itself was just the fascination of it, seeing the videos as a young kid in the States, coming across the Patterson-Gimlin film with Bigfoot, seeing documentaries on the Loch Ness Monster, all that kind of stuff, just always kind of intrigued me. I've always been really big into nature, really just excited about the world around us. And that kind of got me into it. And then my dad told me a story of one of his jungle adventures. Just to do a brief synopsis on it, my dad, part of the job he had while he was down there was a jungle explorer, what they call a contact missionary. It was his job to literally go out into the jungle to unexplored areas and try and make contact with indigenous tribes that had never been contacted before. So he was literally a modern day jungle explorer. So he was told me a story one time when him and his crew were traveling down the river. They rounded a river bend, and off in the distance, up in the trees, they saw 3 to 4 large monkeys, essentially. But the thing that caught their attention was these things were massive. They were familiar with the local fauna. I mean, they ate most of the animals down there. Monkeys were on our menu. And so they knew what they were looking at, and they knew what the sizes they should have been. He described these things basically like large chimpanzees. Couldn't make out any specific details because they were so far away. He knew they were very large. They were black. They said they were probably about 4 foot 4 foot in size if he had to give an estimate. And then when
Right.
they caught the sound of the boat motor, they took off through the trees incredibly fast, just at a
Oh
huge
wow.
high rate of speed. And then they disappeared. And I mean, yeah, they thought it was unusual that these things were so massive, but that was kind of the extent of it
Mhm.
until I started talking about things with my dad. And then he came up and reminded him of the story. And that really just like clinched it for me. Like, wow, like my dad has his own experience with something unusual. So from there, I just started reading everything I possibly could. Read a lot of Lauren Coleman books as far as all the crazy high strangeness stuff that he researched and wrote on. And then I found the BFRO database and I started reading every report. I used to pick a state and then go through county by county, just reading all the reports as much as I possibly could. And the way my brain works is I kind of can remember a lot of these things, and not to the point where I can recall as far as, hey, give me a date or time and I'll pull up something. But I can remember to the point where if I hear or read another report that has a similar attribute or a similar thread in it, I can start making the connections and I'll remember these other reports. And
Absolutely.
so what I do is what I call archival research. So I focus on the reports, I focus on details, and then I kind of build a profile of certain things that happen and behaviors, looks, different kinds of things like that. Um, and so that's kind of the basic of my research. As far as getting into Dogman, to me, it was just another phenomenon, like a Bigfoot, and I went through my criteria of belief. Um, and basically, it was: is there historical context? How far back does the context go? Are there repeated sightings? Is there repeated common threads in the sightings? Is there any tangible physical evidence? And I could say yes to all of those for Dogman as well. And so, in my way of thinking and the way my brain works, then to me, Dogman has to exist in some form, just because
Yes.
it does go through and picks off all my boxes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Have
Uh,
you ever had your own dogman or Bigfoot sighting?
I have not. I am not an experiencer, unfortunately. But I will say that as I have learned a lot of the different behaviors, especially of Bigfoot, I can look back at certain instances and I can say, well, that was a Bigfoot behavior, so it's possibly I had an interaction.
Okay.
Especially growing up after we moved from South America to Upper Michigan, we built a summer camp up in the middle of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, deep in the woods up there, Mead Paperland country. We had an 80-acre plot of land that we built a summer camp on. And I spent a lot of summers up there from the age of 12 to 17,
Hmm.
out in the woods away from nobody. And if you know anything about Upper Michigan, it is literally in the middle of nowhere. And so there was a few things I remember going hunting and then having something parallel me, hearing footsteps.
Hmm.
Don't know what it was, didn't see it, but I know it was there. You know what I mean? Um,
Absolutely.
we had a situation one time where we were leading a group of campers on a hike. We had built a bunch of trails, and one of the trails went through a big field, and off through the field, we could see something had passed through the dew because it was an early morning hike, and we could see a trail. And there was a really heavy, musty odor in the
Oh.
air. Okay. And at the time, my dad's like, oh, it's probably a bear, be careful. We were both armed and we both carry our machetes with us. So we weren't afraid of anything. It
Hmm.
was just, be aware there's something obviously very close to us because we can still smell it and we can still see the trail. But then in
Hmm.
my research going on mistaken identity with bears and doing research in that aspect, I came across the fact that bears don't leave an odor behind.
No.
That's just not one of their traits. And I confirmed this with several different hunters, people with years of experience, and they said no. If you're going to smell a bear, it's going to be up close to it. You're going to have to like sniff them. And usually it's only once they've been hibernation and they're just getting out of hibernation, so they have the mustiness of being in the cave, but they don't have a lingering, musty, nasty odor.
Okay.
Okay, and so that leads me to believe that that was a possible close encounter. But I can't say for sure. There's no way for me to prove it. We didn't look for footprints. I mean, that just wasn't what we were doing at the time.
Absolutely.
So possibly there was some encounters in my past, but that's more of just, I call that wishful thinking on my part, simply for the fact that I've never actually seen one.
Well, as you know, I've been covering or interviewing people on the show, and I plan to at some point hopefully have Jeff Nadoni on also. I've interviewed him before in the group back when I first started the show back in December 2020, early 2021. Can't remember exactly. I must say early 2021. And since then, I haven't had him back on. And as a lot of people probably are not aware of, when you do shows within the group on Facebook, you're not able to transfer those shows from Facebook over to YouTube. So a lot of
Hmm.
the people who I've had on YouTube or on Facebook on the shows, I will have try to have them back on again. I have Greg Yost coming on this next Friday coming up. This Friday coming up. But I'm gonna have him on too because I know Jeff Nadoni has covered this case extensively, and this is part of the reason why I'm talking about this because we
Yep.
bring this a lot when it comes to the animal attacks. We got the Corey Gotze case in Kentucky in 2020, the young boy that was killed and taken like 400 feet straight up a cliff. And
Yep.
some of the reports on that were that it wasn't, I guess some of the police officers that were there and whoever else was on the scene were basically saying that they didn't believe that any, some of them were putting it out there. It was a wild dog attack, but then it came out too, like when you put all the information together with that situation, there's no way that a coyote, a dog, or even a mountain lion or cougar, whatever you want to call it, would be able to take a 13-year-old boy over 100 pounds dead weight straight up a cliff like that. Now that's just one, and you got the Brenda Hamilton case, and I think that she was, I don't know if she's a school teacher out of North Carolina,
Sounds right.
and then I think there was another lady out of Georgia, and I can't remember what her position was, if she was a lawyer or she was a doctor, and I think they found her car parked on the road, the car doors open, like a blood trail leading into the woods, and they thought that maybe something lured her out of the car, and then she ended up getting out to check on it, and
Hmm.
basically that's what took her out. But tonight we're talking particularly about the case of the killings, the unknown canine attacks that resulted in the deaths of Amber Miller and Tony Arns in Cott County, Kentucky, and what was being
Tennessee.
put out. Yes, and what was being put out there is that that we all pretty much, I guess, listen to Jeff, and I respect Jeff. I like Jeff. He was saying that he believes that this is dog man related, based
Hmm.
on some of the information that he got from the autopsy reports, as well as other people that he has talked to behind the scenes on this case. And tonight, I want to give you your opportunity to give your perspective on your thoughts on that situation and the information that you've come up on, and what you believe as far as this is concerned and why. So if you would,
Sure.
we go right into that. Tell us what you think. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. Well, first, I want to put out some caveats out there. Okay. I
Okay.
do believe in Dogman. I do believe there are multiple phenomenon to the Dogman issue, meaning that I believe there might be some flesh and blood. There might be a demonic aspect to this. There's definitely a supernatural aspect to it. Okay. So I don't want you guys to think that I'm not a believer, because I am. Secondly, I do believe that dogmen can and do attack people. I have no issue with that. If we can see that they are a legitimate creature, we are going to come in contact with them, as the hundreds of reports show, and there are going to be negative interactions in there. So I have no problem with the idea that they do attack people. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we need to research those. Okay. I'm really big into that. Not my personal area of research, but because these attacks were so close, they kind of caught my interest. Okay. Especially after Amber's case. So
Okay.
after Amber's case, I first started hearing people trying to connect this with the dogman phenomenon. And
Okay.
so what I actually did is, myself and my girlfriend, we drove out to Jimtown Road, and we did a Facebook Live from Jimtown Road,
Mm-hmm.
driving up and down it so people could actually see the location. We located where the intersection of Jimtown and Carnation Way are, which is
Okay.
kind of the area where everything happens. So I wanted to see it firsthand. What does this place look like, right? I know Newport, Tennessee. I used to have a job there, so I'm quite familiar with it. And I know Newport to be a city, not a big
Mm-hmm.
city, but an East Tennessee city. I'm going, okay, well, this is kind of weird what they're talking about. But the section that they're referring to on Jimtown Road, surprisingly, was when you're driving down it, very forested along the sides of the road.
Okay.
It's on a river bottom area. There's a bridge at a river, which is one of the things that people were looking at as to saying, hey, dogman connection. Okay. And the area was very almost secluded. You felt like you were in the middle of the mountains. The brush grew really close to the road. In fact, I'm driving down, and we turned a corner, and there was a deer standing right in front of us that we almost hit. You know, so I mean, I can see the location, something can hide there. Okay, so that was cool. But then I went through and read the newspaper articles and kind of went through this, and I'm going, you know, it sounds to me like they've got this peg. They know what happened. They know who did it. They know what the dogs did. Okay. So for me at that point, and we're talking about a year ago, I was pretty satisfied that they know what this is. This is this guy and his dogs. They're pretty sure of it. They just have to prove it. And it's all in the newspaper articles and the news reports. So then, a few months ago, it started coming back again. People claiming this is the dog man. This is what's going on. And I'm going, well, no, I already looked at this. Are they? What's happened since that I don't know about? You know. And again, this isn't where I normally study, so I was just kind of, you know, satisfying my own curiosity with it. So then I started getting into it, and I requested the autopsy reports directly from Knox County, and I received those. They're public record. Anybody can go on the website and request it. You just need like the date of death and the names, basically. So I got that, and I read through the autopsy reports with a couple different people, and I'm going, you know, these people were horrifically damaged, absolutely, but I'm not seeing anything that couldn't be explained by a pack of aggressive dogs. And so from there, I wanted to dig a little deeper, so I called the sheriff's department. And of course, it's an ongoing case, and so they're not going to give me any information. But what they did tell me was all the information that they had ever released, they had sent out to the media in a form of media releases. I said, okay. So then what I did from there was got the names from some of the reporters from the articles, and I reached out to them via email. And I had one respond back. He was a senior investigative reporter out of Knoxville. And I kind of explained to him, hey, you know, I'm a private researcher. I'm looking into this. What can you tell me about it? And he actually emailed me all the media release information that the sheriff's department had given out. Okay, so now I have that. What that does for me is it kind of paints a timeline of everything that happened. Okay, so now I have the timeline. I've got the autopsy reports and everything I'm reading. I'm still going, you know, there's nothing in here showing me it was anything other than this pack of dogs. And then I start hearing claims of, you know, DNA, some DNA sample proving that this was an upright canid. And I'm like, okay, well, listen, DNA can't show that. So right there, I know that's not a real claim. The DNA can't tell me it's an upright, you know, bipedal predatory animal. I mean, DNA is good, but it can't tell me that, you know. And then I heard somebody had found footprints saying that the footprints showed that this animal was a bipedal and the prints were bigger than any known dog print ever. And I couldn't find any substantiating evidence to that. There's nothing in any of the reports that I have, nothing. And the sources that I heard said, oh, it was a forensic person that found it. It was a wildlife officer that found it. It was a TBI person that found it. So, I mean, even where the information come from was unclear. Okay, so any of the evidence that people are saying as far as, oh, this proves it was a dog man, for me, is completely unsubstantiated. Okay. You know, that's where I'm at with that. After reviewing everything, I reviewed the autopsies with a deputy coroner friend of mine. And then again, recently with our friend Peter over in the UK, who's an ER nurse, I reviewed them with him because he's an ER trauma nurse, and he was looking at all the wounds and he understands all the medical terminology. And he was saying the same thing. He's like, I don't see anything on here that could not be described as dog damage. Yes, extensive and horrible, absolutely. So then previously I had joined some Cott County Facebook groups, and I just kind of trolled looking for comments specifically about Amber and Tony in the case, and kind of got the feeling with the locals. I didn't want to engage myself too much with the locals or the family at that point, because I just kind of felt it was best to give them their privacy and do their thing. But after watching Jody's episode with you, the other week,
Yes.
I decided to reach out again and reach out to the community. And so I posted on the Facebook group again. And I asked them, I said, listen, guys, I'm a private researcher. Again, I'm looking into these cases. There's a lot of stuff being put out there, and I'm just trying to find out the truth of what happened. And I said, this is the information I have. If anybody has anything else they want to let me know, get a hold of me in private message. I was not prepared for the response that I got at all. I had so many people messaging me with all these details, and just a lot of information from people that live in the area, people that are friends with the victims, people that know the families, people that know Charles Owensby and his dogs. Like, I had all kinds of people contacting me. And I ended up changing my stance on some of the information that I had. I had built a profile, a plausible scenario of how these attacks happen, because that's what we do as researchers and investigators. You look at the evidence and you build your theories. And it even caused me to change some of my my thought processes on what actually happened. But again, it was still evidence of who it was, and it was this pack of dogs responsible for the deaths of Tony and Amber.
Okay. And as you're talking, I'm writing down things that I want to ask you.
Oh, yes, please. Like I said before, you shoot questions at me. I'll be happy to go through it all.
Check your mic just a second. I'm getting an echo in the background. Turn mine down. Turn yours down a little.
How's that?
Let me see. It's a little better. Well, are y'all hearing the echo out there? You don't have your phone on, do you, Justin?
No, not all. Only sound I have is my headphones.
Right,
I don't have any background or anything else like that.
Okay. So let me check. I don't know what to do as far as turning it down. Just a second. Let me see if this helps.
Yeah, no problem.
Are y'all hearing me okay right now? We're starting breaking up. Let me know if y'all hear me okay, or if y'all hear me before we go any further.
I sound like R2D2. Thanks, Peter.
Anybody else, let me know. Y'all too think I sound like R2D2. Let me know. I might need to change my earbuds. I don't know. Y'all let me know real quick.
They're saying they're hearing echoes.
All right, let me hold on. I hope this don't mess it up. Hold on.
Has it been echoing the whole time?
Not now. Well, yes, it is. How about now? They said I'm echoing you.
Nah, I'm not catching an echo from you on my side.
I don't know why this is happening.
I told you, whenever I come around, it's going to have technical difficulties every time.
Let me see. I'm going to ask you this question real quick, and I don't know why I'm hearing an echo. I might not. Hold on, just let me check.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Now they're saying only you had the echo.
All right, let me see what I can do real quick. Hold on.
I'm going to give a shout out to a couple people I saw in the crowd real quick. Jennifer McDaniels.
Go ahead.
That's my girlfriend from Kentucky. She was the one that was with me when we drove down Jimtown Road. She took the video for me. I saw her out there. Hey, Jen. Peter Hasty in there, one that said I sound like R2D2. He went over the autopsy reports with me as well. I appreciate it, man. Peter also really helped me dig into this a little more. He pulled up Google Earth, and we discovered that the original house that I had thought belonged to Charles Owenby was not actually the house, because when I had gone out there, they hadn't released the address yet. So he was able to help identify specifically what house it was, and that was a big help in my research and understanding what was going on. So thanks for that, Peter.
Do I still have an echo? Still doing it. I have no idea. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. Hold on. All right, y'all. I'm trying to get this audio together. This is going to be a great show tonight, and I don't want y'all to miss anything. So y'all hold on. Give us just a second, and we're going to come right back in here. Hold on. And Justin, I'm going to take you out, and I want you to come right back in, okay?
Okay.
All right, y'all. Am I still can y'all hear me now? Am I still echoing right now? Y'all let me know, because what I may end up having to do in just a second when he comes back, I may end up trying to see if it makes a difference. Once I'm gonna see if I can get him to remove his earbuds or headset and see if that makes a difference in the echo or not. Can y'all hear me right now? Okay, let me know. Pete said my echo is gone. Okay, good. I'm just waiting for him to get back in the chat. So when he gets back in, we will reconvene. And make sure, y'all, when he comes back into the chat, make sure that you put all your questions in all caps. That'll be great if you can do that. Put your questions in all caps. He will take questions throughout the show. So y'all just keep your questions, whatever questions you have. He does want to take questions all throughout. I'm going to send him another invite because I'm waiting for him to get back in. So let me do that real quick. And I'm still with y'all. Whatever questions y'all have, he's going to be covering this from an alternative standpoint. So y'all just make sure that you get your questions ready for Justin. But I will probably most likely be taking the questions more or less towards, well, I'm not going to say towards the end, but kind of probably more or less throughout. Okay, he's back in, and once I join him back to the stream, if it's still echo, and I'm getting ready to bring him back on to the broadcast now. Once I bring him back on, if the echo is still going, I'm going to see if it makes a difference if he removes his earbuds or headset and see what happens. Justin, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, okay, so no echo now, y'all. So it sounds pretty good. Y'all hear everything clear? No echo from either one of us? I don't hear any echo, so it's probably good now. I'm going to let you go ahead on. Do you remember where you left off? We were talking about you and your girlfriend went down Gemtown Road.
Yeah. We just basically give a shout out to everybody that was doing that while we were looking at it. But the biggest thing I want to point out where I think will help answer a lot of the questions is the timeline of events. So that's where a lot of people are getting confused on, especially when it comes to DNA collection and all this kind of stuff. The timeline is really critical in understanding kind of what happened here, okay? Because I get a lot of, well, if these dogs had attacked, then there should have been DNA in their system. They should have had DNA in their stomach contents and all this kind of stuff. And this will help clear that up, okay? And I'll just give us a basic rundown of the events, and then you can go in specifically, and then you can ask, your questions for it, so we can kind of pinpoint some of the information the listeners are looking for. And I'm getting this from the media release that I got from the newspaper reporter, or I should say news reporter, because he does newspaper and media articles and online and everything. So on April 1st, the Cotton County Sheriff's Department received a 911 call concerning a male individual lying unresponsive on Gemtown Road who had possibly been hit by a car. Upon arrival, Tony Aarons was found unresponsive with several injuries, which investigators were not able to determine the cause of the injuries at the time. There was no information and no apparent evidence of dogs being involved at that time. So what we're talking about here is when they showed up on the scene, all they saw was Tony lying there basically on the road. Investigators did see injuries that could have been consistent with some sort of animal in the Aaron's case, but they rely on forensics and other special investigators to determine what caused the injuries, okay? So when the police are saying they couldn't determine the injuries, they're not saying that we're trying to hide something. What they're saying is, look, the police themselves, the police officers who arrived on the scene, they're not specialists. They don't have the ability or the knowledge to identify the fact if this was a dog attack or not. All they know is that this guy's alongside the road. He's a police officer. He's not an investigator.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The investigation began with very little evidence and no witnesses. The 911 caller was identified as Charles Owenby, who resided on Jimtown Road. And technically it's Carnation Way, which is a small gravel dead-end road off of Jimtown Road.
Okay.
Neighbors and other persons who lived near the scene were interviewed. Forensic evidence was gathered, and an autopsy was requested. Okay, April 1st. That's the first incident. They find Tony. They request the autopsy. Could have been animal attacks, but we need further information.
Okay.
Nothing else was released from that point until July 12th. Okay. So now we're going to go into Amber, and that's very specific to understand what happened here. On July 12th. Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, Justin, before you go too quick, because I don't want to get off what you just said. You were talking about Tony Aarons real quick.
Yep.
I just want to read off something real fast before you move on to her.
Yeah.
I just want to read off on the coroner's report. Or it says the narrative for his death on the coroner's report. The 52-year-old man, Tony Aarons, died of multiple animal-induced injuries. I'm just trying to bring everybody up to speed who may be unaware of it. So, died of multiple animal-induced injuries. The manner of death is accident. By report on April 1st, 2021 at 0:39 hours, Mr. Aarons was found unresponsive in his neighbor's yard in Newport, Tennessee by the homeowner, which was, what was his name?
Charles Owenby.
Charles Owensby.
Yep.
He was positioned on his right side with the upper torso somewhat prone. He had obvious soft tissue injuries concerning for sharp force injuries versus animal canine induced.
Mm-hmm.
When EMS arrived, he was without signs of life. EMS transported him to Newport Medical Center, where he was officially pronounced dead at 4:02 hours. Scene investigation revealed scattered clothing, paw marks on the soft dirt, and scattered blood on the ground, which are consistent with an animal attack. So, let me read this part and then I'll let you move on. An autopsy revealed many antemortem animal-induced injuries, punctures, lacerations, abrasions, contusions, torn veins, and soft tissue loss, particularly involving the left upper extremity. I'm assuming that's the left upper arm. Whether this is one animal or more than one animal and what type of animal is unknown. No other type of injuries were seen. No gunshot wounds, knife wounds, blunt force assault, etc. So, so that's just to put y'all up to date, but I'm going to let, I want him to go ahead and give us what he wants to share with us. So go ahead on.
So on that note, let's also remember that this is done by a medical pathologist or the medical examiner. Okay. It is their job to specifically look at the body and report on the condition of the body. They are not animal bite experts. They are not animal experts at all. That's not what they do. They are not scene investigators. They are not forensic investigators. They are simply there to medically examine the body, the wounds on the body, provide scientific data on the body, and to try and to assess a cause of death. All right. So I want to put that, because some people are saying, well, how come they didn't do this or do that? Well, that's not their job. They're doing their job, which is the medical examination of the body. They pass that information on to the investigators, the detectives, the forensic people, and then they use that information in their investigation. Okay. So that was the initial narrative for Tony, not the conclusive narrative at the bottom. So that was at the top of the report. Once they go through and do everything, and then they have a section that has the cause and manner of death, and then they have the narrative summary of circumstances surrounding the death. And that's kind of like the mini report, and that's on the very bottom of it. So want to put that out there with it as well. All right, so going on to the events of July 12th.
Okay.
And I noticed this when you were talking with Jody, there was some kind of question as to how everything went with Amber. So on July 12th, the Newport Medical Center, Newport, Tennessee, contacted County Sheriff's Office concerning an injured female that had arrived at the hospital with significant injuries. Investigators were called to the hospital and began an investigation at the hospital. The victim, Amber Miller, was uncooperative with investigators. Investigators once again had little evidence to act upon, but eventually was able to determine that Miss Miller sustained injuries on or near the property of Charles Owenby. Unfortunately, Miller passed away, and an autopsy was requested to determine the cause of death. We are currently waiting on forensic report and specialists to determine what caused the injuries. As we continue the investigation in both cases, we do have evidence that at the time of death, that Tony Aaron's the use of methamphetamine was a contributing factor in his case. The location of Aaron's incident likely occurred next to the roadway, a short distance from Charles Owensby residence, and we are still looking to determine what caused the injuries to Tony Aaron's. We will release the cause of death at a later date upon the completion of the ongoing investigation. Okay, so that was July 12th. That was when Amber was attacked. Okay.
Were both bodies found in or near Charles Owensby's yard or his residence?
Tony was found, according to the reports, Tony was found on the roadside directly on Charles Owensby's property. Amber was found in a yard a couple houses down from Charles Owensby, from the property.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you one question before because I'm going to let you go over everything tonight.
Go ahead.
Real quick. So, do you find it strange that in neither well, let me ask you this first. You and your girlfriend went down that road. Were there other houses in close proximity to his house?
Not very close. Not very close. So the only place there was a kind of grouping of housing was directly on the corner of Carnation Way and Jimtown Road. But most of the houses were spaced apart on this road where they could not see each other, especially because of the dense foliage and the forestation in that area. And if you pull it up on Google Earth, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. So it's not like the neighborhood street like you're walking downtown. They're spaced out. There's a lot of trees and land in between it. The road is really curvy, so you have curves and different things between a lot of the houses. So they're definitely not like neighbors side by side.
Were the houses close enough that if either one of them were to have screamed or called out for help, that anybody should have been able to hear them screaming or calling out for help?
So if they were on Charles's property, the closest house was down at the end of the road on the corner. So depending on the circumstances, if somebody was outside in their yard, I could see where they could hear the commotion, they could hear some yelling and all that kind of stuff. But for one, if you look at the time for Charles Owensby, the call was received at 0:39, so we're talking at 12 a.m., midnight, and 39 minutes, so just before 1 a.m. There's potentially everybody in the area was sleeping anyway. So if you're in your bedroom and you're sleeping and this is happening outside, I can see where people didn't hear anything. Okay. And also to that point, we're going to kind of get into Charles a little bit here. He's known in the area for not being a very nice guy. A lot of the neighbors are afraid of him.
Afraid of him. Can you tell us why they were afraid of him?
Well, the local perception of him is that he is a dangerous person, possibly involved in criminal activity. More than likely involved in criminal activity.
Yeah, from what I heard, he was a known drug dealer in that area or in that neighborhood, as well as he had aggressive dogs on his property. From what I read in news reports, and I don't know how true this is, but the dogs had been known to be aggressive towards other people in that neighborhood at some point before.
That is correct. Absolutely. So we factor that in, and then people are going to be hesitant to say anything. And I think that's why Amber was considered to be, how they put it, non-cooperative, because she was afraid of him. She was afraid of coming out and saying. Now, you know what I mean?
Oh, well, that's a good point, because I had just wrote a question down on that to ask you. They were saying uncooperative with investigators. Now, you shared something very interesting with me when I interviewed you on. We talked over Messenger, and you let me know that one of the things, she was uncooperative. But in one case, I think when I was looking over the media coverage of it over the internet, it was saying in one case that when whoever, I don't think originally we were told like that the police came and picked her up, but it wasn't even the police officer who came and picked her up. It was a passerby. Can you tell us about that?
Correct. So it was a passerby. I believe his name was Stephen Mays, if I remember the name correctly. He's the one that found Amber. She was down on the corner of Jimtown Road and Carnation Way. leaning up against some trees right there at the intersection. Um, and there's different reports on exactly what happened, which if you're familiar with eyewitness testimony, that's not an uncommon thing, that the story can kind of change a little bit because in the moment you're not trying to record what's happening in your head. You're reacting, you're experiencing. And so basically she was found on these leaning against these trees. Some reports said climbing the trees. I personally think that was reporters kind of being a little liberal with the information a little bit. Basically, she was screaming for help, saying, "Please don't let him kill me." There was some reports of some dogs, 3 different dogs that were supposedly around her, licking her wounds. It's not clear if that came from Stephen Mays or maybe somebody else that had happened to see things. I'm not really sure exactly where that report came from. But that did come into the official police information. And then he picked her up. It sounds like he had somebody else with him.
Okay.
In the vehicle, but they picked her up and brought her to the medical center, and then to the ER, basically. And then once they worked on her and they found out, then that's when they notified the police, and the kind of investigation started from there.
When the passersby found her, is there, now I've looked it up, but I wanted to hear what you have to say about it. What was the condition of her body when, or she wasn't dead at the time, but what was her physical condition when the passersby picked her up?
The descriptions that he was giving was just the fact that she was tore up real bad. She was bleeding profusely. It was horrible. In fact, there's a video of him saying something along the lines of, I've seen horrible things. I watched a guy get his throat cut one time, and this was like absolutely way worse than any of that. So she was chewed up. She was definitely just all tore up and mauled.
Were her arms already detached or partially detached before she made it to the hospital?
So they don't specify that at all. We have to look at what the report said as far as in the autopsy report and the condition of the body and the reports. And from what I have read, the arm was severed at the shoulder joint to the point where it exposed the joint. And this is where Peter helped me kind of analyze this a little bit. It doesn't really specify how much of it was torn off. It said it was still hanging on by some tissue and some ligaments. But from reading the autopsy report, what it sounds like is it was tore open at the shoulder. The shoulder joint was disconnected. Yes. And you could see the bones and you could see the joint, but the arm was still at that time still connected. And the same for the other arm. It was tore up, but it was still connected. Later on, they had to amputate one of the arms. And they weren't able to reattach or reconnect it. There was too much damage to it. So they did eventually have to amputate one of her arms.
Okay. So from what I had heard on that case, like when she was, I guess, made it to the hospital before they were able to even do surgery, originally I had heard that her arms were barely attached, especially I think maybe the left arm was barely attached, right, just like you said, at the left shoulder. So basically there was bone and muscle tissue sticking out. So basically, from what I had heard, and I don't know if you've heard this same thing, they were saying that it was basically to the point where they didn't know if they were going to be able to do surgery on it because it was already, they pretty much had to amputate it from what I heard because it was barely dangling on by muscles and tendons. So my question to you is this, and then I'm going to let you go on because I want to make sure that you get your points across about why you feel like it could be a regular dog attack. But my question is this, in this case, is it for a regular dog? I know we are all aware of large breed dogs, Rottweilers, Pit Bulls, Mastiffs, Cane Corsos, and other breeds or whatever. So, but even in some of the worst dog attacks that I've seen, whether on YouTube or any other social media platform that I've seen, I've never seen, and that could be like, that doesn't mean I've seen every video that's out there. And I know that there's some dogs like Kangles and I can't remember the ones that attack lions or whatever over in other countries. But when it comes to regular dogs, have you ever heard of a time when there was a dog attack or multiple dog attacks on a person or people where limbs were ripped off, because not only was her left arm ripped out at the socket, not only that, but the calf muscle, from what I heard, the one of the calf muscles was also, the calf was also ripped off halfway. So,
Yep.
has
Yep.
there been a case where you ever heard of this happening before with a regular dog attack?
I have not. And again, I don't research dog attacks, so I didn't really look that up. I'm looking at this scenario specifically, and what I have found with this scenario is, again, these are Mastiff type dogs. Specifically, they mentioned Cane Corsos, which are Italian Mastiffs. And the way I picture it, we're not talking just one dog. Okay, we're talking multiple animals. And I'll get to information later on where I have actually got the information that it was actually potentially a pack of 5 dogs.
Okay.
Okay. We've been talking about 3. We've been talking about 3, but I have uncovered information of up to 5. And so even let's just say 2, just for our scenario here. You have 2 large dogs like Cane Corsos, very strong, muscular heads, necks, upper torsos, jaws, extreme bite force. Okay. So if they've already attacked the shoulder and there's already damage to the upper point, if you have 2 dogs and they're playing tug of war on a person and each has an arm, it would not be that hard to conceive of that shoulder joint being dislocated at all.
Okay.
Right. So if you've ever had a dog and you grab that rope and you play tug of war with your dog and it grabs that rope and it shakes his head as possibly as hard as it can, which is the behavior. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. So now imagine 250-pound plus dogs that have the jaw strength and upper body strength that we're talking about with Cane Corsos and Mastiffs, and they do the same thing to a poor young girl who's fighting for her life. Is it that hard to think of those shoulder joints being dislocated? And if they start biting and attacking that, they can tear that flesh. That is not hard flesh. In fact, that is just skin over bone on the shoulder joint. Right.
But
So if
what
it's
about when it's
dislocated
more
and they're
than
chewing on it and they're biting on it and you got multiple dogs and they're in a feeding frenzy, so to speak, is it that hard to think of that kind of a damage to a shoulder joint? To me, it's not that hard to think of.
Now, just so y'all know in the chat, I'm playing devil's advocate right now. I'm not debating with him. I like this. I want him to be able to get out here and give us an alternate perspective. I'm just asking him the questions as they come to my mind based on everything that he's saying to me.
Yep.
And I'm bringing up stuff, all the questions that I would have had. So based on that, you brought up the tearing of the flesh, and I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's more than the tearing of the flesh, when the bone is ripped from out of
again,
the socket,
that's dislocation.
Okay.
It's not that hard to dislocate a human shoulder. It really isn't. And especially
Calf
if you have
muscle,
something. So the calf muscle is a bite, right? So if you got these big dogs and they're grabbing on the body and they're pulling and they're fighting each other for it, especially if we're looking at a scenario if there was 5 dogs in this pack, that kind of damage is not unusual or unheard of. I have seen videos, and I know you and I talked about them, of packs of smaller dogs attacking and partially consuming people in their attack. Human flesh is not as tough as we all make it out to be. And so if you have a large aggressive dog and they're in attack mode and they're biting and chomping and just imagine one of these big dogs grabbing your calf muscle and then doing that head shake with it.
Yeah.
Is it that hard to think that muscle you're gonna bite right through it? I don't see that to be inconceivable at all. You know, I mean, hell, we feed these dogs like T-bone steaks and they'll tear right through the muscle and the flesh, right? So why is it so hard to conceive that one of these big dogs could do that? I don't see where that's beyond the realm of possibility. Is it normal? I would say not normal. Is it horrific? Absolutely horrific. But is it beyond even the possibility? I don't think so at all.
Well, my question to you on that, when you mentioned that there's known cases of dogs attacking and consuming flesh.
Yep.
So in those cases, and I'm not disputing you on this.
Oh, you're fine.
Cases that I know of when dogs were known to attack and consume human flesh, usually, and you tell me what you think about this, but
Yep.
usually those were cases when dogs were out in the wild and they grew up in the wild or they brought up in the wild. And so that is the way, like a wild wolf or coyote or anything like that. That's just one example. I'm going to give one more
Sure.
example, a couple
Yeah.
more examples. So they're used to that. And so they basically hunt. That's the
Yep.
way they have their meals. So that's
Sure.
one. Then you have cases where you have dogs, and this is just an example. I might be wrong about this. I'm just going to guess, but people who have bred dogs to fight,
Yep.
and those the cases like that where they will feed them flesh or raw meat or whatever, that might be an example of that, blood and stuff like that. That's one example. And another example, if the human who owns a dog is in a situation where they have died in the house and that dog is in the house and starving, they have no way to get to their food, it's locked
Yep.
away or closed away in a container, they can't get to it, then they are going to result to consuming that human flesh. But would a dog, and I know you brought up a good point, I'm going to let you bring that up in a second, but would a dog that, and I'm assuming in this case, as far as Charles Owenby is concerned, I don't
Hmm.
know the man, I've never spoken to him, but a person who owns a dog, and I'm assuming is feeding this dog on a regular basis, would that dog be, I'm sure that if they're an aggressive dog, he's trained them to attack people, then yeah, they're going to attack them. But would they consume that flesh? Or the most dogs that kill, they kill, and then they, once the person is dead or subdued,
Sure.
then they let them go. What do you think about that?
Well, we're making a couple assumptions here on the tack. So we are assuming consumption based on hunger, right? We
Mm-hmm.
don't know, like you said, we don't know how they were fed, if they were fed. We don't know how proper everything was there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that, to me, that's a huge assumption. Is we don't know if they were hungry, if they were not, and we don't know if so when animals attack. I mean, you've heard of mob mentality, right? When you get a group of humans together in a
Mm-hmm.
mob, everybody loses individual responsibility, and next thing you know, the mob does things the individuals wouldn't do. Mob mentality. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing with a pack of dogs. There's pack mentality. It's like sharks in a feeding frenzy. Once they go in and they're hyped up and they're feeding off the energy off of each other, then they're basically kind of go crazy for a while.
Okay.
Just like, I mean, if you've ever had a dog and you're roughhousing playing with your dog, there's times where you have to be like, hey, and you get mad at the dog and you yell at them, right? I mean, because they kind of lose control. So, all right, so we got to
Mm-hmm.
think of that aspect of it as well. I am not saying that these dogs went out of their way to eat any of these people. Okay, not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that kind of damage, torn flesh, torn muscle, if this was a pack of large dogs, 3 to 5, okay, if they were in this attack frenzy, this attack mode,
Mm-hmm.
then those kinds of damages are what I would expect to see off a body in this kind of situation. We'll get to some of those questions when I paint the scenario that I've learned about, guys.
Yep, y'all save
Um,
y'all's questions. Brandon, don't forget your question that you were
yep,
asking. Anybody who has questions, don't forget, if y'all need to, write them down, because he's got a lot to share and I want to get through it, and we're going to go by this step by
yep.
step. He's got a lot of information and I want to share it. So everybody, y'all out there right now, write your questions down so you don't forget them, because that's what I'm doing right now with my notebook as he goes along. And I'm going to try my best. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let him say everything he wants to say. I'm going to shut up from now on here, because
Well, I
I
mean, it's
get,
like I told you before that the best way for me to get the information out there is to know what questions are being asked, right? Because
yeah.
I can cover all the points and I don't even know what questions you guys have. So please, I love the questions. Hold on to them, and I'll address them as much as I can. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't see any. And again, our friend Pete went through with me on the autopsy. He went through it on his own. I emailed him to him. He looked at him and he came to the same conclusion I did. Yes, these are horrific injuries. I would not have wanted to been in their place. I wouldn't have wished this on my worst enemy. But there's nothing in there that couldn't be caused by a canine
Okay.
of the right size and the right strength and the right temperament, right?
Okay.
I'm not saying, little Jimmy's Chihuahua can do this, of course, but we're talking very large, very strong dogs that purportedly have been trained to be aggressive protector dogs to the point of maybe being going beyond that to being attack dogs. Okay, so that is the reported training that these dogs had. Okay? And so that's where that's Tony and Amber. So that was on July 12th. Okay. Now,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, Amber did pass. I want to say it was July 18th. Let me double check on that for us real quick. Let me see go back to the autopsy report. Yeah, DOD was 7/18. Okay. So on 7/18, Amber succumbs to her injuries, systemic organ failure, which basically means she developed infections from all the attacks. They couldn't get the infection under control, and then all of her organs started shutting down, multiple organ system failure due to extensive bite injuries. That's essentially what she died of. Okay. That was on the 18th. So on July 19th, a search warrant was served on the property of Charles Owenby. Okay, and a forensic team from the TBI, that's very specific, TBI, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, not the FBI, as some people have been claiming. The FBI was never involved in the case. They collected and gathered evidence from the residents and property. After locating Charles Owenby a few days later, okay, he was not at the residence. He was interviewed along with several other pertinences and a witness in which the CCSD was able to locate. Once again, several persons were interviewed in hopes to gather more evidence. I believe that I have found who that other witness was.
Okay.
And I did not talk to that person directly, but I did speak to a person who knows that witness or knew that witness and was able to tell me the story.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I say I was not able to talk to that witness because unfortunately that witness passed away a couple of months ago due to his own personal, things going on in their life. Now we get to the whole DNA question. Okay, the big DNA question. On July 28th at 6 a.m., officers with the Cox County Sheriff's Department utilized the SWAT team to execute a search warrant at the residence of Charles Owenby's ex-wife in Edwina community, which is not that far away from where the attacks happened. Owenby was arrested at the scene for possession of marijuana Schedule 6, and an aggressive dog was taken into custody.
Yes.
Okay. Now, it doesn't specify who owned that particular dog. That's a key point. Okay. He was not on his property. He was at his ex-wife's house.
Okay.
Listen to this. Investigators collected DNA from 2 other dogs at the location that belonged to other persons in 2 separate residences on the property. Did you guys catch that? The DNA collected.
Repeat that again, Justin, because your audio had went out.
Investigators collected DNA from 2 other dogs at the location that belonged to other persons in 2 separate residences on the property. All animal seizures was done in accordance with probable cause and Tennessee laws. Officers also located a shallow grave on the property containing a deceased dog, and the DNA was collected. Officers also took possession of a vehicle owned by Owenby to be forensically processed. Okay, so Amber was attacked on July 12th. A warrant for the DNA from the dog was not issued until July 28th. 16 days later. So, and even in the police the response here, I don't say report, it's not the official police report, it was the media release. They specifically say they collected DNA from 2 other dogs on the property belonging to other people. So everybody's calling about this DNA evidence that would have shown, evidence trace of these people. So they didn't find any, therefore it was a dog man attack, or at least it wasn't these dogs. Well, the DNA wasn't even collected from Charles' dogs. So of course there wouldn't be any Amber Tony DNA.
Ever at any point? None of his dogs at any point?
Not that it specifies. So I have read where the aggressive dog taken into custody, some people have said that was one of Tony's dogs. Other people say that was one of his wife's dogs. Okay, so Randall, what it sounds like is there was 3 dogs DNA tested and 1 was deceased. Now, according to what I read, in one of the chat groups about this incident. The deceased dog was a puppy from the property that had died several months earlier.
Oh, wow.
So that deceased dog they took DNA from wouldn't even have the DNA because it wasn't even one of the dogs. Okay. Now, I want to put out there, I believe there was some seriously shoddy police work in these cases. I do believe the police are covering up certain facts of the case, and I do believe there is some corruption involved in here. Mm-hmm. But none of that is covering up dogman attacks. That is covering up other things that we'll get into as the story progresses.
Okay.
And again, but I can I can understand and see where people are going. This doesn't make sense. What's going on? Why are these police doing this? 100%, absolutely, right? But what they're covering up is something different.
Yes.
Okay, and we'll get into that once I start talking about what the witnesses told me. Okay. I'm just trying to check out comments here too. Okay, and so that was the official timeline, and that's where I'm talking about the DNA thing, right? DNA in this case. Go ahead.
Just keep going. I'm just posting them up there.
Yeah, you're good.
I mean, I don't want people to think I'm ignoring them. We're getting them, and so if y'all got any questions later, just go. You may have to repost them again. Don't forget your questions. I'm just trying to make sure that y'all know I am paying attention to it. But I want him to get all of this out. So y'all, please be patient and just hold your questions if you can until we get to that point of questioning, because I want to get through this. Go ahead.
So after that, there was one final release made, and it's not dated. So I don't know if it was part of the July 28th release or further on, but this is basically the final statement from the sheriff's department. Okay. Mm-hmm. It says, at this time, the case heavily relies on forensic science. Okay. Mm-hmm. At this time, we do not have any evidence that indicates there's a wild animal, domestic animal, or pack of animals that is frequenting the area and attacking people. We, however, are asking people to be cautious in the area as we wait on forensic reports that will take a month or so. We are asking people to please contact us with any information concerning either of these cases. Once we conclude a thorough investigation, have all the evidence, all witnesses, and anything that pertains to these cases, we will present the facts to a grand jury for criminal indictments against any person involved in this case. Prematurely charging any individual without all the facts may result in a dismissal of the case, and justice for these victims will not be served. Our department has worked numerous hours on these cases, processed evidence, requested the assistance of outside agencies, executed 2 search warrants, performed surveillance, and has worked to protect the integrity of all the evidence. We have also worked hard to keep potential suspects from knowing what we know, and that is why we are not able to release specific details to the family, community, and media. I am very proud of the work of all the members of our Criminal Investigation Division, Patrol Division, Narcotic Division, and Administration, who has assisted in 2 extremely difficult cases, one with a non-cooperative victim, which was Amber. Mm-hmm. There will be no more information released in these cases until a criminal indictment is acquired and served.
Okay.
So basically the police is saying, because in the community, there was a huge uproar. People were getting angry. They're upset. After Tony died, the people are going, look, we know what happened. We know who did this. We know who's culpable for. Why can't you arrest him? The problem is you have to have evidence. In a court of law, you have to have evidence. Not just hearsay, not even just knowledge, but you have to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's where they're saying we have to rely on forensic evidence, because that's the only way to prove the connection. Okay, and that's basically what they're talking about there. And then they say we won't release any more information until we can serve it up. Okay. All right. So that is everything the police have ever officially released, and that's the timeline of events. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now I have a question on that, because there was a gag order on that case. Is it still an open investigation now?
It is. Last time when I contacted the sheriff's department, it's still considered open. Yep.
Were any dogs put down were any dogs put down or apprehended, or did they ever claim to have killed or put down any dogs at all in the investigation during the
So
investigation of either one of those cases?
the original, when they served the search warrant, the one dog that was aggressive that they did take into custody. At one point, the reporters had asked the sheriff about the dog, and he said the dog was put down. But then he later released a statement saying that he was incorrect in that information. The dog had not been put out yet, that they were working on obtaining the legal document, the warrant, or whatever paper they would need to terminate that dog.
Okay.
So whether they finally did or not, they never actually released that anywhere. They were trying to, I'm assuming they did, but they never even specified if that was one of the dogs in question.
Okay, Pete said, don't want to disclose what they know. Just a shame it took them so long to know it and lose their chance of proving it.
Yeah. But again, I mean, they're covering their tracks with that by saying, we don't want to mess up the case, which makes sense to a point. But some of the stuff they're not releasing, I think, is a lot of covering up their own tracks, personally.
All right. Well, my question to you is this: like, if they're claiming, so I guess up to this point, they're still claiming it's in Amber Miller's case, they're claiming it's an unknown canine attack.
Because
So,
if they say anything other than unknown, they're making a statement of known, and then they
mhm.
have to put forth what they know, and they're not willing to do that yet.
Was any canine? So, for them to say unknown canine attack, what makes them think that she died from canine type injuries? Did anybody see any dogs or wolves or coyotes or anything? I know that they, in some one case or whatever, they said that three dogs were found on the scene, but those dogs that were there were found licking her wounds. But did
Right.
anybody see any dogs attacking her at any time? And what makes them say that there was a cause of death by dog? Was there
Well,
any
because
human
of
flesh was found in
the
her in their stomachs?
so the reason they're saying is dogs is because of the bite marks and the measurements of the bite marks, and the nature of the attack and the damage are all consistent with canine attack. The reason they're not specifying coyote, wolf, whatever, is because they don't have the specific forensic information in the reports for that. But they're specifying canine because when you're looking at forensic pathology, you're taking the measurements of the bites. You're taking the length of the bites, the depthness of the wounds, and things like that, and they are consistent with a canine attack. But when you study animal attacks, you learn certain types of animals have very narrow parameters of how they attack, right? So, like if you're looking at mountain lion attacks, one of the main reasons they can identify mountain lions is how their people are attacked. Usually they're attacked from behind. A person has already passed them. They're jumped on surprise. They have claw marks on the back from the rear feet. And usually the bite mark is across the back of the skull. Those
Okay.
are indicative of a mountain lion attack. Okay. So and bear attacks have kind of specific patterns, and same thing with dogs. There's very specific parameters where you can make a generalized assumption that this was definitely a canine, but then they have to put in the money and the investigation to narrow down what type of canines. Personally, at this point, I believe they knew what the dogs were, so they didn't invest any extra money to kind of figure out who or what the dogs were.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, so based on what you just said, so they never claimed to have actually taking out or have put down any particular dog at all in this situation in either case.
Correct. Except for the one where the sheriff said, yes, they did, but then he recanted that and said, no, I was mistaken. That
From
was the
what you,
only incident of the police referring to them doing anything with any of the dogs.
from what you heard about, and I heard this on another channel, I believe it was an Abnormal Investigations, and he claimed that I don't know if it was Fish and Wildlife or what um, department had to do with putting out this information or whatever information that he claimed to have gotten on that situation. He said
Mm-hmm.
that two of the largest canine footprints ever found on record bipedal were found on the scene. And I don't know if that was for Tony Aaron's case or Amber Miller. Did you? I told you about that. What did you find into that, or have you
I
not
have
found anything on
not
that at all?
found any documentation of that whatsoever. I have no documentation of the TW, the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Officers being called into the case. No information on that whatsoever. I have reached out to various channels that have made that claim to
Hmm.
see if they would provide me where that information came from. I never got a response. The only mention of the footprints, like we talked about earlier in Tony's case, where they said they saw footprints in the soft dirt around the dogs. But that is the only place footprints are even mentioned in any of the documents or reports that I've come across.
Okay. Did you have anything further you wanted to go into before I get any more questions and stuff?
Well, so those are all the official reports. Okay. But like I said, I reached out to the community. I reached out to the people that live in Cott County and neighbors. And I came up with a whole bunch of information that literally just kind of blew me away, even with the idea of knowing kind of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I believe I've figured out who the main witness was that they mentioned. Um, and I do have permission to share this from the person that told me. I will go on and say this is secondhand information. I
Mm-hmm.
did not talk to the witness directly because this person has already passed away, unfortunately.
Yes.
But the claim is that this person was at the attack
Mm.
when Amber was attacked and eventually succumbed.
So this person claimed to have witnessed her being killed.
He was part of the attack. He was attacked as well.
Okay.
Okay. So this person reached out to me. This person had said that they grew up with the people in the area. They knew Amber personally. They knew Charles personally. They knew Charles' dogs, familiar with some of his dogs. Knew Charles' family members. So this person was ingrained in the community. And the report that she told me from this person, and I'm going to be vague on purpose. I do have details, but I don't want to put it all out there.
Mm-hmm.
Just to protect the anonymity of the person that contacted me, and just to kind of protect the people involved because this still is an ongoing investigation. Okay.
Okay.
But so I'm going to tell the perspective from the person that was at the attack. So this person was at the house. They've been there all day hanging out. Amber came later on during the day because Amber was friends with this person and they were hanging out. At one point, the person stepped outside, let one of the dogs outside to use the restroom, stayed outside for about 15, 20 minutes. And then apparently at some point, the other dogs came out and they started to attack him. And so he was, and it was 5 dogs, specifically 5 dogs is what they said. And so he started being attacked. Charles, the owner, came out. Amber came outside. They tried to help fend off the dogs and stop the attack. Charles went to the point of actually grabbing a lead pipe or a metal pipe of some kind to beat off the dogs and try and get them down. At some point, the dogs switched their attention from the original person over to Charles and then on to Amber. And that's where Amber started getting attacked. And so they were fighting off the dogs off of Amber. She was being viciously mauled. At some point, they were able to pull some of the dogs off of her. She was able to escape and run down the road or get down the road. I can't even say run, but she managed to get down to the end of the road.
Yes.
Now, again, this is a short gravel offshoot off of the main road, Jimtown Road. It goes up and it dead ends. And Charles' property is at the end of this road. And then you just come down the gravel road to Jimtown Road, which is where she was found. Apparently, while she was down there and she was found by the passerby, and the passerby took her to the hospital, this person and Charles were still up at Charles' property fending off and trying to get these dogs under control.
Oh, wow.
The supposition at this point is that it was even to the point where Charles had to shoot one of the dogs because they could not get it to stop and calm down and stop attacking.
Wow.
And so this is the story that this person told to their friend. The friend, he was contacted them on the 16th. So at this point, Amber was still in the hospital and still alive.
Yes.
And they met up and talked in person. The person I talked to witnessed the wounds, said they
Hmm.
were very deep. Some of the wounds were down to the bone. They were really in need of medical attention. She talked to this person specifically, got him to go to the sheriff's department and test and give a witness account. So I believe that that is the witness that they mentioned was this person, and that's what happened.
Okay.
And that's
Now,
for Amber's case.
earlier you had mentioned that the police stated that Amber was uncooperative. It says in the police report, or not the police report, the media report, that Amber was uncooperative with
Uncooperative.
investigators.
Yeah.
Now, if this is like, at what point did she encounter the investigators? Was this after she like
That
had
would have
made
been
it to the
at the
hospital?
hospital. At the hospital after her initial medical attention, the cops would have gone in there to talk with her and interview her.
While she's basically bleeding out, arms and stuff almost ripped out, calf
Well,
muscle ripped
they
out,
they
and
would
they're trying to question her at this
they
time.
wouldn't have let the officers in there until she was stabilized. They're
And so,
not going to have the officer come into the emergency room while they're operating on her and trying to, get her stable and question her. It's going to be after she's been stabilized, after they have her in her hospital room, after she's, had a chance to rest and be a little coherent. So it's not going to be like she's bleeding out on the operating table and the officers all around her screaming for sponges and spatulas or whatever they do, and Amber's screaming because she's in pain, or they just loaded her up with Novocaine or lidocaine or morphine or
absolutely.
whatever they right. So that is not the circumstances of her being investigated.
Well,
They're
let
going
me
to
ask you,
interview her once she's in her room, once she's stabilized, once she's coherent.
but heavily medicated and sedated,
Oh, I would assume so. Yeah.
and somewhat still in pain, because I've been in surgery not for anything crazy like
Oh,
that, but
yeah.
you're still in pain even though they've sedated you and given you heavy morphine or
Yep.
whatever else,
Absolutely.
whatever else they put in there. You still in pain and
Yep.
groggy and still somewhat out of it, and really somewhat in a place where you don't even know what's going on.
Absolutely.
So, and this is just, like I said to y'all before, I'm not going against him, like, because I don't know, I wasn't there. Like, it's so graphic on the details of the autopsy report and on the hospital report and every other report that's out there on this case, that I completely understand and can say why, I can seriously say why people say this is Dogman related. And
Sure.
but he's bringing up evidence and information. Also, I wanted to give this side as well, because I want to give everybody a voice in this, because it's interesting. We need to hear all sides of it. And I
Absolutely.
really, when Justin reached out to me, I said, you know what, this is interesting. You need to get on here and talk about this. So my point on it, my thoughts on it is also like the fact that when they say uncooperative, and we do know in some cases, and a lot of these cases, when it comes to Dogman, Bigfoot encounters, sightings, attacks, or even times when people have been out on certain different properties or land, there are a lot of times in the cases where these men in black, or what do you want to call them, secret agencies, alphabet agencies,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
men, powers that be, whoever they are, they come in and they tell you, you saw a bear, you saw a dog, it was a mountain lion attack.
Sure.
And in these cases like this, so when it comes out there, sometimes I've seen people in groups and even in some of the live chats say, well, the police report didn't say that. Well, the police report is never at any point gonna ever say, if it is a dogman attack, it's never going to say there's dogman. So don't look for that
Right.
in a
Right.
report. So in this case, we're saying it's questionable either
Well,
whatever.
I
Well,
mean,
but you're never. So if y'all are looking for that, I'm just telling them, don't ever look for it to ever say Bigfoot or dogman attack.
right.
It's
It
never going to
won't.
come
It'll
up.
never specify. That's why that's what I do is I look at the details, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I do my research, I don't look for names of stuff. I don't look for you called it Bigfoot, you called it the Missouri Monster, you called it whatever. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care about what you're calling it. Tell me your description. Tell me what you saw, and then
Mm-hmm.
I will match it up to my knowledge base, right?
Absolutely.
Um, it's same thing. That's why a lot of people in witness reports they confuse Dogman and Bigfoot. Some people have never heard of Dogman, so to them it's a big upright walking hairy thing. It's Bigfoot. That's all they know.
Yes.
So they're going to say, "I saw Bigfoot. I saw Bigfoot." But then they go on and give the description, and people like us, we go, "Wait a minute. It's got a snout and fangs and teeth." that's a dog man. That's not a Bigfoot. Oh no, it was a Bigfoot. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And so that's why I'm careful with that kind of stuff. You look at the details, you look at between the lines. And like I said before, I firmly believe that there's dogmen that have attacked people and it's been covered up 100%.
Okay.
But I think in situations where we have a viable answer, we have information that leads us to a specific answer, I think we need to at least err on the side of caution and not confuse that with a dogman thing, right? So if I'm reading, and again, this is not my area of expertise. I don't research animal attacks, but I think I'm going to start because this has kind of woken a passion for me to kind of research some more of these.
Mm-hmm.
Like you talked about the kid in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
When they start saying things non-specific, okay, like a pack of wild dogs. Okay, well, do we know what the wild dogs are? Have there reports of these wild dogs, or is that just a catch-all, right? If they say a bear attack, okay, well, show me the forensic reports, the autopsy reports that indicate the type of damage and the wound marks and the bite marks that are going to show it's a bear attack, right? But when they start putting that out there where it's random, oh, it was just some random dogs, that's when I think we need to be suspicious. That's when
Absolutely.
we need to put these under more scrutiny and kind of see what's going on. But in cases specifically like these two Cott County cases, to me, they're too specific. They're saying this guy, these dogs. And so as a researcher, I have to err on that side of caution and going, look, this is what the evidence is pointing towards. Could it be a huge, crazy, massive cover up? I mean, potentially, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Could there be a bunch of secret information out there? Could there be leaks in the police department leaking information? Well, sure, I can't say definitively no, but is that really likely in this case? Or is it more likely this was a case of a person that trains his dogs to be highly aggressive, to be attack dogs, to attack on command, and they got out of his control? Because if you have a pack of 5 dogs and they're aggressive dogs, you have to lead them with a pack mentality. And if you lose that pack mentality, if you're no longer their alpha, you lose control. They're going to do whatever they want.
Absolutely.
Right? What is the most likely scenario? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we have to look at. That's what we have to look at. And so that's where, for me, specifically passionate about these Cott County killings, we need to focus on the accounts that are more likely to be dogmen and stop looking at accounts that are more likely not, because all they're going to do is muddy the water with bad information. We're not going to be able to build a proper profile. We're not going to be able to build proper facts if we're allowing cases in that are more than likely have nothing to do with dogmen. Does that make sense?
I get you. I understand.
And so that's why I'm passionate about these ones, for sure.
So he's basically given you all the other information that has not been put out, and the information as far as how long it took for law enforcement even really get involved, and they were not there on the case.
Right.
Now, the dogs at the scene that were found licking her wounds.
Yes. So I actually had somebody contact me about those dogs.
Well, I have one question for you on that real quick.
Go ahead. Yep.
Like in usual cases, like when you see people that are hurt, or even dogs when they are hurt themselves, they will be found licking their own wounds. Or even with my little dog, when I've been hurt before, she's come up and like lick my tears when I'm sad or depressed. So dogs will do that. So were they claiming that those dogs that were found on the scene had anything to do with it?
So that is where there was some muddled information, because nobody ever specifically claimed those were the dogs that attacked her. Okay, that was the assumption. Okay, Amy's the one I talked to. She reached out to me from Cott County. She's the one that knows everything. I told her I'd keep her anonymous, but she really wanted to see the show and what was going on. So everybody, Amy Becker, she's the one that reached out to me and told me the scenario with Amber and what was going on. So there you go.
All right. Hey, Amy.
So she's the one that came with me with the information. But I had other people reach out. So specifically in regards to those dogs, I had somebody from that neighborhood reach out to me and said, hey, the police are saying these 3 specific dogs. And she's like, but I think I know who those dogs are. And she's like, they're not Charles's dogs. The one Mastiff dog was owned by this neighbor over here. The German Shepherd type looking dog is a stray. And one of the other dogs is another neighborhood dog. And they're friendly dogs. They're not, I think they were trying to help her. So, and she's going, I don't know what's going on. But the dogs the police talked about aren't Charles's dogs to begin with. Okay. And that's where at first I was really confused, because the only way I could answer that would be, well, if these dogs are trained to attack, they're also trained to stop attacking. And that was my hypothesis on why the dogs would just be calmly standing around licking her wounds, right?
Absolutely.
But if we follow this new scenario of the attack happened up on Charles's property, and Charles and this other person were dealing with the dogs while Amber made her escape, then it would make sense that these were other neighborhood dogs that are known to be out wandering. The person that reached out to me told me herself she's picked these dogs up several times and brought them to the owners, except for the stray dog, which she took home and fed and then let it go, because she's an animal person, right? So that makes more sense to the scenario. Okay, so that's those dogs. And that's where Peter, where we were talking about the 3 specific dogs, and these are the breeds, those were the dogs that we're talking about. And according to my sources, the dogs that Charles had were all Mastiffs, except for one. And potentially that was the one they ended up shooting.
Well, can I go over something with you
real
quick in the Amber Miller case?
Yep.
Y'all get y'all's questions ready too, because we're not getting ready to shut down just yet. So y'all got another 45 minutes, maybe an hour with Justin. But real quick, on this autopsy report, there's a bunch of wounds. It's like this autopsy report is so extensive, y'all. It's disgusting,
isn't it?
It's disgusting. It's about 13 different. I mean, this about 5 or 6, 7 pages long on this, or probably 6 to 7 pages long on Amber's alone.
6 pages, yep.
There's some
plus the addendum pages
on some of these wounds. Like now, number 9 on there, when it says the front and the lateral aspect of the right arm or forearm, along with the elbow region, demonstrated large, muscle deep, extensive trauma with subsequent debridement, that's cleaning out or excavating the dead tissue, which in the necrotic tissue was approximately 13.5 inches long and up to 5 inches long in the circumference. So that's dead tissue. So the tissue has died because of these animal bites or whatever, canine bites, whatever has happened, because of the tissue around those wounds have died. So it's 13.5 inches by 5 inches.
That's a huge wound area. That's horrible.
It is. The superior means upper margin, extends over the posterior. Posterior means the back. Proximal right arm, the back side of the right arm. Distal to, which that's the outside, to the inferior border of the anterior, which means front aspect of the main wound. Proximal to means in the middle of the anterior, middle of the front right wrist. There's another deep oval elongated laceration with evidence of subsequent debridement, which means that an area of 1.3 inches of debridement in the greatest dimension. The remaining strip of preserved skin on the inner and proximal aspect of the right arm is merely an inch wide. Now, from what I heard, it was 45%. She had 45% of flesh and skin just gone.
42% of the skin. The part that wasn't clear to me when I read that, and Peter, if you're still in the comments, maybe you can speak to this, is it sounds like they're saying 42% of her total skin was gone. That's what it sounds like. But it didn't specifically say total skin, so I don't know if they're talking specifically about an area of damage or her whole body. Does that make sense?
Pete, he's still in the comments. Pete, if you heard that, like Justin just asked you, and I brought up to him about 42% of Amber's skin and flesh being completely gone, like just wasn't there. Like, so that's almost 42%. You may as well go on and say 50%. Almost half of her flesh off her body was just gone. So even if you put 3 or 4
skin.
Okay, so even if you put 3, 4, 5 big dogs, they ate up half the skin on her body.
Skin. So skin will tear off. Like if you've ever skinned an animal, like I have a background in hunting, and if you like shoot a rabbit and you cut its skin, you can literally just pull the skin off the body.
Okay.
Okay. Um, so I'm looking to see if I can find the specific wording on it. But I mean, yeah, if we're talking that kind of damage, I mean, again, this girl was chewed up, completely and utterly chewed up. I honestly, she had to have been a very tough woman to survive as long as she did, and to not die from the wounds and bleeding out herself. And that was actually one of the questions that Peter had brought up when we were going over it, which is a good question. How come with all this extensive damage, is there no talk of arterial bleeding or arterial damage? How did she not bleed out from the time of those initial attacks, and then when the witness found her and drove her to the hospital? And I told him I don't have an answer to that. The only answer that I can give is that she was just lucky, so to speak, that none of the arteries were damaged.
Now, did you ever reach out to the Cobb County medical examiner's office or the coroner's office to ask that question? I'm curious. I mean,
I
that's a
did
good
not.
question.
The only way I reached out to them was to get the autopsy reports.
Okay.
And I know it's in here, but for some reason I cannot find that spot where it says 42%. I wonder if it's in the final statement.
I know Jody Cook had told me about that when I was talking to him, and
Yeah.
I believe I do believe that I didn't see that in the autopsy report, but I did see
Okay,
it.
so it's right here.
Well, it was the media report. I know I've seen it on one of the media.
It's at the very bottom. If you look at the narrative summary of circumstances surrounding death, the very bottom in the main paragraph, the decedent's left upper extremity was amputated, and approximately 42% of her skin was gone.
I see that now.
Yep, down there at the very bottom.
Yeah, I see that.
It's again, and that's one of the things I think too. By claiming this as something that it's not, I think it's a disservice to the family and to the idea of providing closure and final justice to the family. You know what I mean?
Do you find it also very disturbing the fact now, from what you saw on these autopsy reports, does it not sound like? Does it not almost, and you tell me your thoughts, does it not almost sound like they had to try to make sense of this? It was ridiculous to them. It was so graphic, so terrible to them that they had to try the best they could to try to make sense of this?
Well, yes and no. I mean, this is what these people do for a living. And as horrible as this is, and the damages were, they've seen worse. They've encountered worse. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's as a matter of they had to. We got to remember, these are medical pathology professionals. This is what they do every day, all day. They examine traumatically damaged dead bodies, or they examine bodies where there is no obvious signs of damage. That's what they do on a day-to-day basis. And again, I have a friend of mine who's retired now, but he was a deputy coroner. And he's search and rescue, and he did all this stuff. And he said after a while, it becomes very clinical. And as horrible as it sounds to us, and as horrible as it was, it's what they do every day. So to come up with, this was so horrible, they had to make sense of it. Well, that's their job, is to make sense of it. It's what they do. You know what I mean? Like, it's their job to clean the body, look at the wounds, measure the wounds. And that's why it's 13 freaking pages long, is because the extensiveness of the damages. But I think they did a really good job making sense of it. Now, again, it is not the coroner's responsibility to say specifically this was a dog or this was this kind of dog. It's their job to say whether it was intentional, accidental, right? Or whether it was, a toxicological issue, if it was gunshot, if it was knife wound. That's what their job is. It's not their job to speculate beyond what the damage of the body is. You know what I mean?
Yes. Now, I got a question for you. Do you find it, and I'm gonna go back to this
Yeah.
autopsy report in a second, but do you find that it's strange, like all of a sudden, why now all of these wild dog attacks? Not just that, not just this case, but in every case, Brenda Hamilton, the school teacher, I mean the oh, she wasn't a school teacher. Brenda Hamilton was a school teacher in North Carolina. The lady in Georgia, I can't remember
Yeah.
what she was. And then you had Corey Gotze in Kentucky, and then a few cases in Oklahoma also.
Hmm.
Now, what I find strange, why all of a sudden, so these dogs just done went wild?
I,
Dogs
I,
gone
I
wild.
agree. I agree 100%. I don't believe. Listen, so I grew up in a third. I grew up in a third world country. We had packs of wild dogs, feral
Hmm.
dogs, or stray dogs. I don't even want to call them wild dogs, right? Because wild has a whole different connotation to it. Okay, so let's be careful of the words we use. We're talking stray dogs.
Okay.
Okay. And we had packs of them down there, and you'd see them. You're driving on the road, and they're down an alley, and they're going through garbage and stuff, right? And they would attack and kill
Right.
people as a food source. But like you said, that's that what they had to eat, and they were starving. I
Hmm.
don't see that in this country. I
No,
have
exactly.
I have never seen outside of a natural disaster. So we're talking hurricane, right? This kind of thing. The other person was hurt, Mariah. Was hurt very bad, just not to the point of having to go to the hospital. Um, but I have never seen wild dogs roaming the streets of America. Especially if you look at these accounts, we're talking
I'm glad
rural
you said
America.
that. I'm
We're
glad
not
you said
talking
that.
downtown Chicago, downtown Detroit, where there's stray dogs. We're talking countryside, rural America, where most of these attacks are happening.
Hmm.
Okay, and
No,
again,
I'm glad you said that because I'm like,
that makes me
like,
suspicious. I agree 100%, and that's
mm,
why I say when that's what the excuse the police are using, those are the cases we really need to look at.
he
You know,
said, Amy, my original theory was that Charlie set the sick, I guess he's saying sick the dogs on Tony and Amber due to bad drug debts owed to him.
yeah.
That don't, if
So that
that,
was an original working theory, and so we didn't really touch on Charles at all in his history and his criminal background.
well, can I say
Um,
something real quick?
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and I'm gonna let you take over. Based on that, okay, this is just devil's advocate again because that don't make sense because he already is a drug dealer. He's already probably had multiple times when they came in and raided his place. He got drugs and paraphernalia all up in the house. I don't see where he would do that and then risk them coming, and especially if his dogs are vicious like that. He's not going to risk them coming to his house and coming in there and raiding his house and having to get rid of all them drugs and stuff like that. So that theory to me, I'm not saying it's not there's some fools out there to do some crazy stuff like that, but
Right.
it just don't make sense because he's not going to take a chance of having them come to his house, and then if his dogs were to actually have killed these people, which in this case the people were killed, no, that theory I'm gonna have to throw that out the window. But go ahead, what you were gonna say.
Yeah. So the basis of my original working theory was that with Charles being a drug dealer in the area, that these were his protection dogs. I have known dealers in the past that had protection dogs, and
Hmm.
usually they're a large, dangerous breed, Rottweilers, pit bulls, etc. They're usually kept in the house. And so usually there is animal excrement all around the house, inside the house, all over the place. And then usually they're also half starved to make them more aggressive. That's kind of a standard MO for dealers that use dogs for protection. Okay. And my
Okay.
working theory was mostly of the fact that some way, somehow, the first attack with Tony was when Charles himself called 911. That was an accident. It wasn't supposed to happen. But again, the dog's out of control. And to take suspicion off of him, he originally called 911. Okay, that was my original working theory. I have now since changed that theory based on information I have. The information that I got, this person wanted to remain completely anonymous, didn't even want me to put out the information he gave me. So unfortunately, I can't put that out there. but I would
Mm-hmm.
say it has changed my scenario on what happened to Tony a little bit. But it's still the same person and same dogs responsible. Okay. And then my scenario was with Amber. I had two working scenarios based on information, but they also basically was on the same line. But this time, Tony couldn't call 911 again for a dog attack on his property because that automatically made him look suspicious. So I think at this point is when he fled and went to his ex-wife's house. And I believe, and as the people in the community believe, he ended up having to destroy all of the dogs involved in the attacks. Otherwise, he is culpable for manslaughter and giving there was two attacks, potentially up to murder if they charged him.
Okay.
Okay, so that was now the new scenario that Miss Amy told me about changes the events that happened, but not the results, obviously, and not the culpability of Charlie if his dogs were killing people. Right. So I still think, and the community still believes that he destroyed those dogs so he wouldn't be in trouble. Now, I'm going to put this part out there as well. I was contacted by a few people. I had heard some rumors that Charlie Owensby was somehow involved with the sheriff's department.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I did come across some people that verified that information for me. That
he had a
Charlie,
relative that worked there, I believe, from what I heard.
Well, from my understanding is, and it's a very light understanding, so I'm not putting this out there as fact. All right, guys, I want you to understand that this is simply what people have told me, and I have no way to verify it. That Charles, in some capacity, assisted in training dogs for law enforcement for the sheriff's department.
Mm.
Right. So that to me throws in the case of where this cover up and corruption is coming in from. Right. So if this guy did in fact do that, and I don't know if he did or not, I can't prove it, was training for him and the dogs got loose, I can see where the sheriff's department could be going, hey, listen, if you don't do something about these dogs, then we're going to have to charge you for it, basically. But if you get rid of the dogs, then we're not going to be able to do anything. I kind of think that maybe how that played out a little bit. But that's why Charles has never been charged or indicted really for anything to do with these attacks.
And real quick, I'm going to answer this one real quick. To the best of my knowledge, Ken Tuck said B, where in Kentucky was the boy killed? I believe, and I don't know specifically what city, but I think it was Knott County, Tennessee. All you got to do is just go on Google.
Yep. Knott, not county.
Yes. And type in Corey Gotze, animal attack or death. That was in 2020, I believe. Yeah, 2020. So one other thing, let me see. Y'all get y'all's questions ready. It's 8:46. We're gonna shut it down about 9:15, unless Justin has more he wants to go over.
That's pretty much all the basic layout of all the information that I've uncovered in my research.
Amy Becker, she said Charlie has gotten away with a lot in our county. She lives there in Cott County, Tennessee.
I'll let Amy answer that one.
All right, now
she was definitely a neighbor there. Like I said, she knew Amber personally. No, she did not know Amber personally, but she knew the other victim that she calls Tubbs personally. Amy also graciously has put me in contact, and I haven't been able to get in full contact with her yet, but a member of Amber Miller's family.
Absolutely.
And because I've been really hesitant. I didn't want to reach out to the family. I didn't want to bring them into our world of crazy cryptid and monsters killing people and all this kind of stuff, right? I didn't want to do that. I really didn't want to do that. And so I hesitated, but Amy had already reached out to this person. And when I was talking to Amy, she contacted the family member and got permission for me to call her and talk to her personally, because it has been reported that while Amber was uncooperative with the police, she did tell her family members exactly what happened. And
Alex,
so I want to reach
okay.
out to the family and talk to them personally.
And I hope you do. And if you do, let me know because I'd like to hear what
I
you
will.
get back from them.
I've been so busy with work, I haven't had a chance to since my conversation with Amy.
Alex Seekins said dogmen are out there, but not as common as people think. Alex Seekins, I beg to differ on that. I do know that they are, as far as I know. I'm not gonna say all 50 states because I don't think as of yet I've heard any encounters of them in Hawaii, but I know that they're all in. For the most part, there's been cases of them in all 50 states. You can look up the Cloak Hedgehog channel, and I don't know if they still have that channel anymore, but they do have a map on there
That
with
is the
specific.
important thing. Yeah.
Yes. Now I know here where I live at in Alabama, North Alabama to be exact, not just North Alabama, the whole of Alabama, not just Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, the whole South,
Yeah.
Louisiana, Florida. This is deep over here. And then if you ever saw Monster Quest, you know the Michigan Dog Man, Wisconsin. What was Linda Godfrey, Justin? Beast of Bray Road. Was that Wisconsin?
That was Wisconsin. Yeah. Bray Road. Yep.
So then, not only that, Texas, Oklahoma, like this, all over the place. So when you come into it, like I'm going to put it to you like this, Alec, and anybody else who might think that same way. A lot of the times they are out there on a regular basis. You just don't see them, and most people don't even know what to look for. They blend in so well with their surroundings and the background. They camouflage so well that a lot of times you're not even going to see them. And then a lot of people who've made it point to say, "Well, I'm a hunter and I've been in the woods all my life." Well, yeah, well, you've been in the woods all your life, but number one, a couple of things. This is just my theory on it, and I could be completely wrong. A couple of things on that. You're a hunter and you're looking for deer on the ground. Number one. Number two, these things are also in the trees. They're in the trees a lot. They're hiding behind trees, they're hiding behind bushes, they're in the trees. I've got videos and pictures of them from 2013 all the way up to 2019 in the trees, behind the trees, behind bushes, peeking out, taking multiple shots of them consecutively back to back to back because what people don't realize, they are so subtle in their movements that unless you're taking a whole bunch of consecutive shots back to back, you're not going to even see the movements a lot of the time. Number one. Number two, they're so smart that if the wind is blowing, they're going to move with the movement of the wind through the leaves of the trees. I mean, you've heard this before, I'm sure too, Justin.
Yep.
Number and so then not only that for the Bigfoot, I mean you can take this as Bigfoot or dog man, they are able to stand so still and able to blend in so well that a lot of the time they are mistaken for tree trunks. And to
Yep.
be honest with you, I think that it is optional. I think they choose specifically if you have an encounter or a sighting of them out in the open and you just don't accidentally happen upon them or catch them by surprise because they didn't, you were downwind and they didn't smell you or whatever. I think sometimes they choose specifically who to show themselves to for whatever reason, because they don't feel like you're a threat or for whatever reason they want you to see them or because you caught them off guard. But I also feel like that when it comes to it, I do feel like that they are also, yes, I do believe that they're flesh and blood, but I also believe that they are flesh and blood and supernatural at the same time. For you who want to discount that, and I know some of y'all like to leave comments after the fact, it's misleading. It's not misleading. That is my personal opinion. You can all come up with your own personal opinion. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. That's my opinion. You can come up with your own. Mine, from what I've seen them do myself with my own eyes, I've seen them manifest from nothing to coming into a visualization. I've seen them go from where I can see the head, the neck, the shoulders, and upper of the body. And then there's an opening in the trees below, no leaves. Where's the rest of the body? I've seen that. So, and I've also seen, and I've coined this, I'm not going to say I coined this, but I like to call it the predator effect. If y'all have ever seen that movie, The Predator, I've seen that mirage type predator look. I've seen that too. So when it comes to them, there's something supernatural and spiritual in nature. That's just my opinion. You come up with your own theories. And for the ones of you who believe flesh and blood only, there's several different things about that that just doesn't coincide because there's too many things that doesn't get it. That's not explained for that. What are your thoughts on that, Justin?
Well, I believe they fit into the same category as with Bigfoot goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same type of entity, same type of creature. And I've been working on this for quite a long time. I've been studying the Bigfoot phenomenon for about 25 plus years now. And I have gotten to the point where I am kind of on the same page as Ron Moorhead with his quantum Bigfoot theories. I believe in energy, and I believe in what I call vibrational theory. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, what it boils down to is we perceive the world in a very small, narrow spectrum of visual capacity, vibrational frequency, sound frequency. And I believe that these entities are able to either continuously or able to adjust their own frequencies to levels that we aren't able to perceive, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily in a supernatural way, but just in a vibrational frequency way. So we have a very narrow field that we can visually perceive. So if they exist on a
Absolutely.
field that's, how I do it, this big, well, part of that field we aren't able to perceive by just because our senses aren't attuned to it, right? So therefore, they can actually be a perfectly natural creature without supernatural abilities, but still exist in a plane that we can't perceive. And so that's kind of where my thinking starts going into when it comes to things like the cloaking and the ability to camouflage so well. I believe they have the ability to adjust their frequencies, their vibrations, so to
Well,
speak,
when you
and then
say
that
you
provides
think that they
that.
have, so when you say you think they have the ability to adjust their frequencies, what are you saying? Can you break that down?
Sure. And so everything has a frequency, right? Everything is waves. Everything is frequency. Our visual spectrum is based on light wave frequency. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's what infrared, ultraviolet, those are the far ends of the visual spectrum that we can see. Those are a specific wavelength frequency. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
if these creatures are able to exist or they do exist on frequencies above or below what we can perceive, we just won't see them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if they have like an innate ability or an instinct or however it is, where they can raise that frequency above our perception, they will in effect disappear. They will cloak. They will be unable to be seen.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Have you ever heard anybody say that it had something to do with their hair? I've heard
Yes.
that.
Yes. So I've heard that it has to do with the fact that they supposedly have hollow, translucent hair. The only problem I have with that theory is the idea that polar bears have translucent, hollow hair, and they're not camouflaged, right? And
Okay.
so if polar bears have the
Yeah.
same type of hair and abilities that they're claiming Bigfoot has, then it has to be more than just the fact that they have hollow, translucent hair.
Oh yeah.
Right, because
Daryl.
that is found in nature already, and it does not have the effects that they're claiming it would be.
Okay.
Does
Daryl
that make sense?
Denton. It does. The group is Crypto Normal Encounters with V Moss. That's on Facebook. Marquetta or any of you that's here still moderating, if y'all are still in there, if you can go to the group real quick and just share, copy the link and paste it here in the chat, that'd be great for anybody who's not a member of the group if they want to join. Now, Mariah Pearson had a question for you. She said,
Yep.
but why wouldn't Amber just say what happened if it was just the dogs attacking by themselves?
Okay. Well, let's look at our scenario here. If we assume that Charles is known to be a dangerous person, and if he's involved in the criminal underworld,
Mm-hmm.
if Amber didn't think she was going to die, would she have pointed to him as the reason for her attack?
Mm-mm.
No.
Good point.
That is
Y'all,
why I believe she was uncooperative, because she was still thinking she's going to live and she's not going to snitch on this dude.
absolutely. She's feared for her life, her family's life.
Exactly.
And then if she's even, thinking that if she survives, she didn't want to have to worry about him coming back for her.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Pete said he believed that Dogman and Bigfoot have attacked and killed people, just not in this case.
Yep.
I guess a perfect example, or from what we have all heard, it's not documented, but the LBL case, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Justin?
I, if you look at the specific information that has come out, there's really no other explanation other than a cryptid, either a Bigfoot or a dogman. There just isn't. You know what I mean? There's no normal animal attacking that area that would do the damage and bring the people up into the trees and that kind of a thing. So definitely has to be
Justin,
something.
repeat everything you just said. You went choppy and digital for a second.
Uh-oh. Given the nature of the attacks and the descriptions and the damage that was caused and everything, no normal creature that we know of in the area would do that. And so I have no problem with the idea of it being a cryptid. Now, can we specifically say dog man? Well, given the history of sightings in the area and the aggressiveness of the attack, I think that's a pretty good culprit.
Okay. All right, y'all. Justin's audio was going out, and we may
Oh
be
no,
getting ready to lose Justin on his feet. No, Justin,
we good? Can you hear
Justin, are
me?
you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you
Yeah,
hear
you're
me?
frozen, but I can still hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, you were
Um,
freezing up there a
yeah, I
minute
can still
too.
hear you back now.
Okay.
Daryl Denton said we don't
Daryl,
really know what Amber
We
said.
do
She
know what
died
she
after her
said.
arm was removed.
She did not die after her arm was removed. She was died 6 days later in the hospital. She was attacked on the 12th, didn't succumb to her injuries until the 18th. She specifically said to the police investigators that she fell into a bush, which is what she told the
Can y'all
police
hear?
investigators.
Can y'all hear Justin? Or is he digital for y'all too? Or let me know because I don't want y'all to miss any of what he's saying. Justin, say something else.
Colonel said he can hear me. Colonel Davis.
Perfect. Okay. Can you respond to that question again?
Sure. Amber was attacked on the 12th. She did not succumb to her injuries until the 18th, so she was in the hospital for 6 days. She did not die after they removed her arm. She specifically told investigators that she fell into a bush. And we know that's not the case. So that's what she had said specifically. But it was also reported that she did tell her family members exactly what happened. But that is why the police report says the witness was non-cooperative, because all she would say was that she fell into a bush.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly
Mariah
right,
said
Amy.
Amber was in very bad shape in the hospital. She was on a lot of drugs. I'm sure pretty out of it. Could also be that she was afraid of Charlie. And then Pete was answering Daryl Denton's question. He said, hold on, I'm trying to pull that question up. Y'all, I'm sorry. I don't know why it's freezing right now. We're going to get ready to shut it down in a minute. And I may even have Justin back again. He's been a great guest tonight. And I just wanted to bring him on tonight to be able to give him a second, give him a voice and basically give him an opportunity to share this opposite side of the spectrum, because if we've only pretty much covered one side, and like y'all know I've been trying to cover this for a while. For whatever reason, my computer is freezing up and it's
All right, Colonel Davis, I know who you are now. Oh, we lost B. You guys still see me and hear me on there?
all right, y'all. I don't know what's going on. I got kicked out of my
There
feed.
she is.
We're getting too close. So anyway, Daryl, did you want to take the questions real quick? I know you can read them too.
Yeah, that was
And Justin,
definitely.
while you do that, I'm gonna take a quick bathroom break real quick. I'll be right
Sure.
back. You go right ahead.
All right, guys, do you have any questions, any specifics, anything you need cleared up? Just go ahead and put it in the chat. I will take a look at it there.
Okay, let me remove his question. off the screen real quick. And for whatever reason, it's freezing up. It's not allowing me to do anything. And they've taken over my computer again, I guess, tonight, like they did when I interviewed Lance Hightower. So I'm basically not getting any. Justin, go ahead.
I'm here. I was seeing if anybody had any questions to post.
All right, y'all got any more questions?
Not seeing anything. Questions, comments, anything you want cleared up?
Well,
Eddie,
quick,
these
Justin,
attacks took place in 2021. Peter, we said we were going to look into that Kentucky case. So when I get time, I will go ahead and start pulling information on that. You can reach out to me. Richard, I have never seen a dogman. I have read reports of 13 to 15 foot tall. I have never seen one myself. Freddie Lee, definitely hit me up, brother.
And I do have one question for you, Justin.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna get ready to shut it down because I don't know why this feed is messing up, and it always they're taking over again like they did before. I'm just gonna put it down to that. There's no reason. I already paid my Wi-Fi bill for this month. They tripping again.
Right.
Oh, so we covered Amber a lot tonight. I'm gonna have Justin back on here again. Justin might actually be back to co-host on another show too, because I like his theories and I like his. Justin is able to come from he's like the devil's advocate version. He's like, I like that. So I'm gonna bring Justin back. We went mostly into Amber tonight, so I'm gonna bring Justin back just so we can talk Tony Aaron's because there's other stuff I want to discuss with that, and sure. I'm gonna bring him back on some other stuff too. Next week, y'all, I'm gonna let y'all know this real quick. So I'm gonna go ahead and get ready to shut it down. I'm seriously gonna bring Justin back. I like him. I like him. I want to thank all y'all for showing up tonight. Marquetta, Brandon, thank you for showing up tonight. Mr. D Knuckle, Jennifer McDaniels. Was it Amy Becker? That's your friend that showed up.
Yep.
Amy Becker, Eddie Rodriguez, Focus Up, Richard Reed. I want to thank y'all for showing up tonight. It's so many people. Greg, Man of Light, Sasquatch, Scarborough Sasquatch Station, Randall Johns, Roger Davis. I want to tell y'all all I appreciate all of you for showing up tonight. I don't want to leave out anybody. Voltron, Ken Tuck. I'm probably not going to be able to call off everybody because we've been going for like 2 hours. Just every single one of you know that I appreciate all of y'all. The group, if you're not a member of the group, Marquetta, somebody please share it real quick. Let me just do it just in case y'all still slow real quick. But y'all, if y'all not a member of the group and you want to join the group, go to the Facebook group. If I don't get it in there quick enough or some of y'all don't hear it, just remember if you listen to this show, just don't be lazy. A lot of people now want you to share. They want you to copy and paste the link. Don't be lazy. Type it in on Facebook. Crypto, CRYPTO, one word, normal, one word altogether, Crypto Normal Encounters with B. Moss. I'm getting ready to share the link down there for y'all, but for those of you who missed it later on and don't see the link in the chat because some of y'all don't see the link, then just type that in, Crypto Normal Encounters with B. Moss. Crypto Normal, that's one word. I'm copying the link right now. I'm getting ready to paste it down there in the chat. The guest tonight is Justin Decker. Justin, you're a member of the group also, right?
Yes, I am.
Justin is a member of the group. Any questions? Matter of fact, in a minute, after we get ready to shut this live down, I'm gonna go ahead and have what I'll do for any of y'all that didn't get your questions answered tonight. I'm gonna post a question in the group. If any of you have questions for Justin Decker, my guest for tonight's show, even though it's late right now, he might not get to it tonight, but I'm gonna tag him in it. And any questions that didn't get answered, you can ask them those questions in the group.
Absolutely.
I'm posting the link to the group right now. So y'all, I'm getting ready to put it in there, and we get ready to shut this down. Justin probably got to go to work tomorrow. I got to get up early and be at work at 6:45.
I'm off tomorrow, but I pick up my kids tomorrow, so I still got to get up early.
Y'all heard that. This is the link to the group.
Put out there real quick, if you don't mind, a shameless plug. A lot of people want to know more about me. Check out Wolf's podcast, Paranormal Roundtable, guys. I am the guest on Terrors of the Amazon, parts 1 and 2. It kind of gives you a much more full, complete background on myself and my experiences. I don't have a lot. I'm just a researcher. I'm just the scholarly type. I like to say that if I was born 300 years ago, I'd be that monk in the basement of the monastery with all the books. That's me. I'm the scholar type. Anything that attracts my interest, I dig into, just like this case, and I try and get all the details that I can. Um, so to hear more of my full story, like I said, Terrors of the Amazon Paranormal Roundtable with Josh. Feel free to check it out. That kind of gives you a rundown of my history, my background, and all of my experiences.
All right. Justin, what have you seen? Justin, you said you hadn't had any cryptid encounters, right?
I haven't had any cryptid encounters that I can specify. I have had some interesting experiences in my life, but nothing I can't point to like a UFO. Um, my family and I, we're very Christian, biblically oriented. We have had some encounters of a spiritual side like that. Too much to get into, too detailed to get into here tonight. But it is mentioned in that show, and I'm always willing to talk about some of our experiences as well.
I told you I'm gonna have him back on. Focus up. Focus up. You said you're a truck driver. Yeah. Focus up. If you're not if you're not a friend on Facebook, then you need to reach out on Facebook and send me a friend request, and I will. You can definitely share that encounter with me. Just let me know it's you, because I'm sure you're not gonna focus up on Facebook. Let me know it's you, um, and we will go from there. And I'll tell y'all, I'm not gonna hold him anymore tonight. I'm getting ready to shut it down too, because Taco Bell just came back out with the Mexican pizza. Yes. You know what? I sat in drive-through like not 2 hours, about 30 to 45 minutes. I was so mad when I got up there to the drive-through and they was like Mexican pizza sold out. I was so pissed. So they should have got rid of the Mexican pizza and the taco salad. But y'all, I'm gonna go get me a Mexican pizza right now. Probably two of them. Now
I,
listen.
I heard from a reliable source that they're just as good as they always have been.
Oh my
Ain't that
God,
right,
yes.
Jennifer?
Listen, so y'all, he gonna be back, and I want to thank each and every one of you tonight. I really appreciate all y'all. Justin is great. I'm gonna have him back again. So y'all just know that if you, we're gonna post a question in the group a minute, and whether tonight or tomorrow, I'm gonna tag him in, and we're gonna go with that. Any questions that didn't get answered, and he will be back again, probably co-hosting at some point soon.
I'm always willing.
Whenever he's
Whenever
off
my
from work.
schedule fits, I'm all about it. You know, I believe that we all have a fascination in the subject, and we need to have an open dialogue, and it's okay to disagree. And it's like I told B, look, I don't care if you agree with me or not, as long as we can have an open, respectful discussion and dialogue. I will talk to anybody about anything. I have no problem with that.
Absolutely. And with that being said, y'all have a good night, and we will see y'all on the other side. And just keep in mind, Greg Yost, I think he's my guest for this coming up Friday. And tomorrow night at 7, I will be on Texas Front Porch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob as his guest. All right. So with that being said, good night, y'all.
Good night, everybody. Y'all have a good one. Be safe.
Yep. Be safe. Justin, that was all.